Hi guys. Okay, so today's going to be a little bit different and I hope you bear with me through this, but I think it's necessary right now. So I wanted to start off with a Bible verse, Psalm 23 verse 4, which goes, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me." So first of all, let me just say for the record, I acknowledge that some people are turned off by religion, and that's okay. I don't expect you to be turned on by religion, but I'm hoping that you will bear with me. And I wanted to bring up, to that end, Pascal's wager. And I know some people would be offended by this, but I'm going to go with it anyway, because, it's just a thing. Pascal's wager is about how humans risk their lives by their belief or their lack of belief in God. So basically what he states is that if you believe in God, you lose nothing. But if you don't believe in God, you lose everything. So, I mean, make of it what you will, but that always stays with me because my faith, although I started going to church as a child, where I lived whenever I was about 3 years old, there was a church right across the street. And some of the kids from the church were playing volleyball in there was actually two churches, and in between there was this sort of field where people would park on Sundays, but it was kind of a playground for kids during the week. And one of the times the kids were playing volleyball and they invited my brother and I over to play and then to church, and we wound up going to church. I think I went the most frequently and got very involved, and that was when my faith really first began, and it stayed with me my whole life. However, there have been struggles. So in my 20s and 30s, particularly in my late 20s, early 30s, whenever I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, or RP, um, I really, really struggled with my faith because I couldn't understand why God hated me so much that he would do this to me. I had always been very visual, um, and vision was like a huge thing to me. It was the one thing that I would like not, I would go deaf before I would, lose my ability to see. And the reason for that was because I was very, very much passionate about the film industry. I became a makeup artist so that I could find access into that industry. I never really did. I'm still trying to get access into it through documentary work, but anyway, that's another story. In the meantime and in between time, I write, and anyway. So I've struggled, and so my faith is very precious to me. I don't talk about it very much, but it seems that right now is a good time to bring up some of those things, some of those fundamental values. And faith is one of those things that sort of um, expands on fundamental values. I mean, that's where they come from, really. Whether you look at Judeo-Christianity, I can't speak, Judeo-Christianity and the Bible, the Torah, the Talmud, or whether you look at other philosophies or religious thought, the idea is that there are a lot of things that are fundamental truths. And I mean, okay, so maybe you're an atheist. We'll look at John Locke, and I think it was John Locke, who talked about natural rights. Great. Sorry, issues with the phone. I've had so many issues with things these days. Let me just plug in, and then maybe I can continue with this one, because, yeah. Alrighty. Now, we'll forget about that technical issue, which I could just keep having more and more of those, so, fun. But I'm going to get through this today. So, yeah, whether you look at philosophy from various eras, whether you look at religious thought, whether you look at um, whatever you need to look at, but let's just look at values and belief systems and the things that have made us who we are in the modern age. A lot of those things, like freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom um, of expression, the ability to work and earn our own wages and live in our own homes, property rights, all of those things are part of what makes us who we are today. Those are all good things. Those are our fundamentals to our way of life and to an evolved society. Because and I've been looking at a lot of history lately because of writing the Wexit book, and yeah, it's not done yet because I'm very fussy and I want to make it just so. And anyway, and new information has come out. I've had technical difficulties. It's just a whole myriad of issues that have happened lately that have just slowed everything down. But I'm still working on it, and I will continue to work on it until it's finished and I can get it out to you, because good heavens. But in the meantime, I've been studying a lot of history, and I keep seeing with the stuff that's been happening in 2020, it's like we're going through another cycle of this repeating of history, and the stuff that's coming up right now is frightening. There are some parts of it that remind me of the civil rights movements in the 60s. But then there's other things that are even more frightening. The censorship, the trying to change history, the pulling down of statues. All of these things are trying to suppress history. To my view, it's trying to suppress history. It's trying to control the people, lock people into little tiny boxes with no rights and no ability to fight for those rights or defend those rights. When I see things like what happened with David Menzies in Nathan Phillips Square, where he got swarmed, and even whenever Ezra and all the bodyguards and the cameramen went back, and they got swarmed by these people who want to throw away all of those values and all of those rights that we have fought so hard for over generations, and not just white people. That's the thing. The civil rights movement was primarily about Black people gaining their rights and their equal status under the law. And now it's like everybody wants to turn it backwards. We don't want those things that were fundamental. We want to suppress the history. We want to, and I'm not saying me, because this is not me. This is like it seems like society, or parts, large elements of our society, or at least the noisy ones, want to suppress those things that we fought so hard for. All of us, together, we agreed on these things that were fundamental for all of us. Our free will, our ability to not be serfs and be tied to the land as basically slaves to a monarch or a nobleman of some sort, a landowner. The people that had ownership had more power and control over their own lives, which is why property rights are so important. The freedom of speech is important, the freedom of expression, the freedom of the press. These things are fundamental. Our values have evolved, and the whole constitutions, the whole ideas of all of these things evolved out of our faith and out of our belief systems, out of our philosophies, and those came from us figuring out that the way for people to have power and control in their lives and to be fully evolved is to have these values, these common values agreed upon, so that we can all express ourselves and we can all own our own property and we can all be in charge of our own lives. And when that happens, the society is much stronger. Now, here's the thing. I believe that we are in a war right now. I think it's being fought differently. And let me go back to World War I and World War II. World War I, I believe, was the first war where they used chemical warfare. I think they had tanks as well. So it was fought very differently. And that was one of the things that was a major trigger of that war, or not trigger, but a major aspect of that war, was that it was being fought differently than wars that had been fought in the past. However, the war was still relatively contained to soldiers fighting soldiers. In World War II, it was a whole different situation. By World War II, Hitler went against, and I mean, it happened on the Allies side as well. So, you know, the idea was to bomb targets because there was flight, so there was the ability to bomb from the air. So what they would do is they would go in and bomb areas, and they would take out entire towns. So civilians would wind up being killed in the process of war, which hadn't happened before, at least not to the same extent. and Hiroshima happened, and all of these different things happened, and so war was fought differently. That's the point that I'm trying to make, as weird as that might seem. Wars, World War One was a different kind of war. World War Two was different again, and I think we're in potentially already in World War Three. We just didn't know it because it's being fought so differently than any war previously. I think this war, so again, let me digress a little bit. Some of the censorship and the erasing of history that's happening now with the tearing down of statues and all of that kind of stuff, and changing stuff online, so you can't rely on information on Wikipedia because it's people who are going in en masse and changing information. I think it was Neil deGrasse Tyson who kept trying to change his own Wikipedia page, and it kept changing back because the mobs would go in and change it. I don't remember what the information was, but and I'm not even sure if it was Neil deGrasse Tyson, but it was somebody that had, had this challenge where they couldn't get their own information, like facts they were trying to correct on Wikipedia. They couldn't keep it corrected because people would go in and continue to change it. So you can't rely on that digital information. And you'll look something up on Google, and the history is different, or the images are different than what the reality was. So these are really crazy times that we're living in, that this is being thought of as being okay, that the changing and the influencing of history is okay. And I go back to the burning of the libraries of Alexandria. I go back to Chinese history, where they burnt a lot of the ancient scrolls so that the people wouldn't know past knowledge, so the emperor could control the people better. I go and I think about the Middle East, where the same thing happened. Algebra came from the Middle East, and a lot of those thoughts and philosophies and learnings had been suppressed. And then I go to Nazi Germany, where they burned books, and the beginning of communism in Russia, where they destroyed information as well, or manipulated information. And I just look at all of these things and I go, well, what is so different then compared to now? It just seems like we're getting into a situation where we have thugs that have more power than the press. The police will not protect, they'll protect them to an extent, but they've got to be pushed into protecting the press. The police themselves are under attack, so it's understandable why they would be resistant from helping out, whoever. Like, all of these things are happening, and I can't help thinking that, right now we really, really have to rely and find strength in our faith and our basic values and beliefs. Whether you believe in God or whether you believe in the goodness of humanity, those are the things that we're going to have to really hold on to, and we're really going to have to come together as a people and figure out what exactly is going on here. We have to get past all the rhetoric, all the noise, and it's a lot of noise, because the people who are pushing this agenda are very loud and very obnoxious. And we need to dial it back, sort of take a step back, take a breath, and go, okay, what are the fundamental values that we all share and that we all hold dear? And if you're an atheist, you can go to John Locke and the philosophers of the Enlightenment era. We need to get back to fundamentals and start looking at what we have in common, so that we can, and hold on to those, because those are the things that are going to give us strength. Those are the things that are going to keep us sane in the madness that is in this world. We don't really know who the enemy is specifically right now, but there is agitation that has been happening for years. And those things, this is the shadow of the the shadow in the valley of death. We're walking through this shadowy time where things that should be taken for granted at this point in history are being ignored. The rod and the staff to me are those fundamentals. Those are the things that we need to hold on to. Those are the things we need to remember and to come together as a people. The lockdowns are making that difficult, because how can we get together in a bar or a restaurant and have a conversation? I heard recently that the pubs in Ireland, which is like a pub culture, you finish work, you go to the pub afterwards, and then you go home. Or you go home, have dinner, and then you go to the pub. I mean, the idea is you stand at the bar in the pub, and you have a conversation, and you get the stuff off your chest that you need to get off your chest, and you have a joke, and you socialize, because that's the human animal. We're a social being, and we need that social activity. Otherwise, you have problems. And that has been shown by an increase in suicides and other mental health issues since the lockdowns happened. And I think it also was part of the fuel for the fire when it came to a lot of the rioting and stuff that happened as well. There's so many things that I could get into right now, and so many things I just don't even want to touch because I know how incendiary they are. But for now, I just wanted to come on today and give you that food for thought that, in times of trouble, we need to rely on our faith. Whatever that faith is for you, those faith in those fundamental things, that is what's going to keep us strong during this time. And that's what's going to bring us back together again, so that we're not fighting against each other. We're fighting against whatever this foe is that is coming against us and trying to divide us. United we stand, divided we fall. And there has been a lot of division that has been sown. We have to get past that. We have to put those things that are different aside and start looking at those fundamental values that are the same. And so I'm leaving that with you today. And I hope you got to the end and aren't too terribly offended by religion. And so, yeah, I wish for you peace and happiness and contentment in this time of trouble. Take care, guys.